Hey Dawn, just want to do that critique on the portrait you have up in the Facebook group. The way it's going to work, I'm going to set up your reference photo side by side with the actual painting you're working on. And then what we'll do is we'll just kind of compare and contrast, see what's working, in the portrait, what's looking good, and then what could use improvement. I'll let you know about that. And you're in the driver's seat. Whatever you want to incorporate based on what I tell you is up to you. But just want to help you along here in the process. So let me switch over to the other screen and we'll get started. All right, so we have them side by side right now. And what I'm noticing is, I think overall you have this done very well. You have the overall likeness and the look of the child and the baby done pretty well. I like the roundness you suggested with the forms of the clothing, the stripes, and that's well done. We can really tell that their arms are round and they're coming forward in perspective in the right way. This kind of a 3/4 angle where the head is turned down is a tricky angle to get for proportions, and I think you've done that overall pretty well. I'm not sure, when you sketch this, did you sketch this freehand or did you use a grid? The reason I ask is there's just a couple proportions that are a little off, but if you did do it freehand, I'd say kudos to you because it is overall very well done. But there's just a couple things that look like they might be off on the proportions. Okay, so let's start with the girl, and we'll zoom in on her face, and we'll just really kind of critique everything very close up. This is how I do it in my critiques for my students, and I'm doing it the same way here for you. And we'll just go through all the different features like the eyes, the nose, the mouth, and then kind of look at the overall head and the form of the subjects and make sure everything is accurate. All right, so looking at the eyes, I like the way you painted the blue of her eyes. You can tell that she has lighter eyes. The way the pupils are darker and the irises are lighter, that's good. Looking at it, I would say that it looks like her eyelids are a little too thick. The distance between the top and the bottom is just a little too much. You look in the reference photo and it's pretty skinny, that distance between the two. So I would bring the eyelid a little closer into her eye, this top part closer to this bottom part, to kind of narrow the gap between these two lines. Okay, so that's one thing. And then secondly, the eyebrows. You want to see the shape because the eyebrows aren't just the hairs themselves, it's also the shadow formed by the eyebrow ridge that you're trying to capture. And then the eyebrows underneath kind of fan out. I mean, when we look at people head on, we see the eyebrows kind of at an angle because of the way the skull juts out. And so it looks like they're very flat, and it looks like they're not very thick, but in actuality, they are a little bit thicker. And since you're seeing her head at an angle, you're seeing some of those hairs below. So the eyebrows are too thin. You want to have kind of this shape like I outlined right here. And on the other side, it's going to be something like this. And that's kind of the shape you're looking for. So you're going to want to thicken that up, and they should come up just a little bit higher as well. Just kind of like how I outlined it here. All right, so that'll make a little bit of a difference for you. Another thing is that the distance between the eye, if we say the eye ends right here, although you know, it's kind of hard to say. Seeing it at this angle, the eyeball itself ends about here, but then there's the tear duct, and you're seeing it all in perspective. But let's just say it ends right here, and then it goes to about there. And then, of course, there is this accessory fold there, you know, the crow's feet kind of wrinkle. But looking at this distance, if we were just to take like this distance to maybe this distance right here, and then add it on that same distance, it would bring us to about right there on the nose. So if we take the distance you have, I think it's like that, and then maybe like that, and we bring that same distance over. Maybe, no, it probably brings us actually almost to the edge of the nose, okay? So basically what I'm seeing is that her eye is too large, and just trying to show that to you. Clear this off, but you're going to want to decrease the size of her eyeball, and that's kind of tricky too, because her head is at an angle. You're seeing that round shape. Okay, so just to show you what I'm talking about, I have this lid here, right? When I turn it at an angle, it's oval. I mean, it looks oval because you're seeing it in perspective. Same thing with an eyeball. When you see the eyeball head on, it's round, but when it's at an angle, it looks kind of oval. And so with the eyeball, you want to make sure you're making it skinnier than what you think it should be. So I would make this thinner, you know, at more of an angle. It's going to be thinner than what you have it. This might come down a little bit more, but it needs to get brought in on both sides. It needs to be more narrow. Okay, so that would be a change you could make. Now the eyeball on the other side looks too small. Let's zoom in a little bit more so I can show you exactly what I'm talking about. All right, so right here, this is kind of the shape you're looking for. And then this would be kind of like the eyelid and eyelashes, a little hard to see. You know, I have the benefit of zooming this way up, but you know, when I'm painting a picture, I'll get very, very close to my reference photo so I can see it just like how I'm seeing it on the screen. Getting really close to the details and seeing those patterns that make everything up. So that's kind of the pattern you're looking for. That's the shape you're looking for, something like that. So you want to increase the size of her eye, and you want to get that pupil larger, and then have the eyelid right here, you know, like that. It actually might come out a little bit more to the right. You got to have that gap between her nose and then the eyeball. So that's what you want to do. So a couple changes for you there on the eyes. Now let's zoom out a little bit so we can see this more in context of the whole image. I think overall the nose looks pretty good. The mouth, the angle of the mouth is just a little bit different in the reference photo as compared to what you have in your painting. So I'm seeing an angle like this. All right, and the angle you have is just a little too steep. It needs to kind of go up a little bit more like that. So you want to change that, and I think also the mouth needs to extend out just a little bit on this side too. And that'll help you as far as the proportions go. Okay, now let's zoom out even a little bit more. And I think overall you have her chin done pretty well. Maybe it could go extend down just a bit further than what you have it. That would be a change you could make. And the jawline could come out just a little bit more this way, if you can see these markings I'm making. And overall, I think you have the patterning of the light done pretty well, but I would like to see a little more luminosity here on this area that's lit by the sun. You know, I teach my portraits using a glazing technique. So instead of kind of doing a mid-tone and adding a highlight to it, I actually kind of work the other way. I start with more of a white or just slightly toned canvas, and then I add you know, series of glazes on top, just blocking in the shadows and leaving these areas light. And what that does is it gives you more luminosity because the white is being preserved of the canvas, and that light just shines through. And you'll add a few layers on top, but it's a little different approach. But you know, if you painted this more in the opaque technique, maybe you glazed it a little bit. You might have been following my tutorials on the Facebook group for a while, and maybe you did glaze this in. But looks like this skin tone is a little too dark. And in actuality, if we compare values, if I could cut and paste this, I can't on this program. But if I were to just identify this value right here on her shirt and then move it over on top of her forehead, you would notice that it's way, way darker than the forehead color, significantly darker. And so what I'm seeing here is this color is possibly even darker than what's on her shirt, or about the same. So you might want to use my value checker tool. If you don't have the value checker tool, I have that available for free. Let me know. And if you're on my email list, you can download that. And then you can actually compare your values and make sure everything is accurate between your reference photo and your painting. But values are very, very important. That's huge. Proportions first, getting, you know, the accuracy and the likeness, and then secondarily your values. After that, skin tones and color would be the third thing on the list. You got to get the proportions and the values correct first. So I would recommend, since you're at this stage, to, you know, just go over this with a lighter color. You can do it that way. You can mix like a titanium white and maybe a raw sienna, little bit of a Indian yellow or cadmium yellow if you have that, and organic red orange, which what I use, or you might have a cadmium red orange, and mix that, you know, just tiny bits of that more vibrant color, but mostly titanium white and raw sienna, and then go over these highlighted areas with that color to really increase the vibrancy, because that's going to really make the painting come alive. Now, going into the rest of it, let's move on to the boy's face. And let's see here. I'll zoom in a little bit, just get them about the same size. All right, now, like I was saying, I think his eyes are a little too close together. Just judging by where the nose is and how it lines up, you might want to move his eye over just a little bit to the left. This eye right here, move that over. And I think that'll help. If you take some of this flesh tone color and just cut it in over this side a little bit, that will help. But you really want to see this shape here. You've got the eyelid Let's actually, let's zoom it in just a bit more. But anyway, you've got the bottom of the eyelid, and then you have, you know, the top part, and you want to get that thickness right. So right now, this is too, just like in the other eye, it's too much of a distance. This is kind of what you have, and just using that line to show it's just too much of a distance. Here, it's a very short distance. So saying all that to say this, you just want to bring that eyelid down and get that closer to the other eyelid. Same thing with this one, although this one's a little more accurate. Yep, you just want to see that shape goes up a little higher, and then I think the pupils need to be a little larger. Okay, you need them to be a little larger, and that'll help. Also, the white of the eyes is not actually white. We always think of eyes as being white, but when they're in shadow, they're gray. So you want to fill this area in. It shouldn't be white. That shouldn't be white. It should actually be gray. So you want to darken those two areas. Same thing here with the highlights on the forehead. You, just like I suggested with the girl, go over with that lighter color and really emphasize these highlights here, because that's going to make a huge difference in how your painting turns out, to see those values and just really emphasize them. Looks like his mouth could come over to the right a little bit more if we line up, draw a straight line down to the end of the mouth to his tear duct. Yeah, it goes just about to the tear duct, all right? So here, draw a straight line down. It's missing the mark by that much. So that mouth has to come to the right quite a bit more, that smile. You want to line it up just to that point. And let me zoom out just a little bit and see, as far as the proportions of the eyes, what could be done. I think if you can bring this eyelid out and the shadow out more to the right, that's going to make his eyes look not so crowded and not so close together. That will help. Also, emphasizing this highlight a little bit can help, and getting rid of those white areas on the eye, shading those in, and fixing that eyelid, I think, will help too. But yeah, also this shadow here could come out just a little bit more as well, like that. That's what I'm seeing here in the reference photo. You have a secondary shadow coming from his clothing. It kind of cuts down like this. So you don't want to miss that shadow coming from the lapel of his clothing. All right, so I'm going to zoom out and zoom out. And you'll need to, of course, this is in progress. And so, you know, we have to keep in mind, in progress, there's always things that don't get resolved till later. You really want to darken the skin tones here on the girl's arm, and make sure you have good contrast between the white of her clothing and then this area in shadow on her arm. So if you do that, that'll really help too. Okay, so anyway, Dawn, I think I'm going to leave off here on this critique. I hope I gave you some tips that could help you. As a student of realistic acrylic, all access, or if you take my Paint Your First Amazing Acrylic Portrait class, you'd also have access to 4 critiques like this a month. I just wanted to help you out. I saw you in the group, and I want to make sure, you know, since you were asking so kindly for help, that, you know, I was able to give you some tips that would help you. But anyway, let me know how this helps. And if you need any more critiques like this, of course, you can sign up as a student. And, you know, if you're unable to do that, there's still lots of people in the group that are willing to give you some tips as well, including myself. We're not going to leave you hanging. So either way, we got you covered. Lastly, if I can just ask a blessing on your portrait, I usually do that for all my students, just asking for God's help, because I do that for my own art. So I just like to do that for you. Father, I ask you to bless Dawn in this painting. Help her to finish it well. I ask, Lord God, that she would see the things that need to be corrected, you know, the different nuances, the shading, all the details, you know, the features in the eyes and the mouth and nose, all those things, Lord, that could be corrected. But things not just that I mentioned, but also, Lord, that she might see as she's painting it, or other people in the group mention. Lord, I just ask you to bless her and help her to finish this painting well, that she would be proud of it. It would be a blessing to those who see it, and she would be encouraged in the process, Lord, knowing that you're the master artist and you give help to anyone who asks. So bless her, Lord, and bless her in her life. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, so Dawn, that is my critique for you, and keep in touch on the progress. Thanks so much for sharing it in the group. And God bless, and we'll talk to you soon.